Hi, my name is Joe Bartolomeo. I'm an Oregon-based Social Security disability lawyer. I have offices in Hillsboro, Oregon, and Astoria, Oregon. I represent people before the Social Security Administration. Many of my cases are at the hearings office in Portland, Oregon. And in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 mistakes that you can avoid if you are in the process of appealing your Social Security denial or applying for Social Security disability benefits. I look at claims files probably almost every day, and I've been doing it for quite a while. And in those claims files, I will see medical records. I will see questionnaires that my clients have filled out. Some people do a better job than others. And these, these forms are filled out months and months, even a year or two before I get involved in the claim. And I think to myself, man, I wish they hadn't done that, or I wish they had done this. And that's why I'm making this video, because I can give you a few things that, may not make a difference at the end of the day, but may help somebody like me or a representative make the case for you, or may actually put you over the finish line and get your claim approved. So let's go through the list and talk about the mistakes that you can avoid when you're filing your claim for Social Security disability. So I combined this: working when you really can't, and then waiting too long to file your application. I should have said it that way. Now, the first one, I don't see that happen very often, because the people that I represent have been out of work for quite a while. They just can't work. They can't do their job. And the issue really is there a job that they can do? But when I was making up this list, I remember a client that I had, and he is a guy who had a few kids, and he was a responsible dad, and he was working a job that was literally beating him up. And he was an older worker. He had obvious disabilities, but he would try to work, and he would do as much as he could, literally until he couldn't walk anymore. And he would just get above the threshold of what we consider to be significant and gainful work. And I have another video that goes in great detail about all the things that you have to prove when you're applying for benefits. Well, the first thing is that you haven't worked and earned money. And his, his sense of duty to his family was so great. And he would apply and he would get denied. And he would call me up and I would say, look, stop working. Your doctor is telling you can't work. You're killing yourself. Don't work. And finally, he figured it out, and he swallowed his pride, and he applied for benefits. He wasn't working. It was an obvious case, and he got his benefits, and everything worked out the way it should have. Now, that doesn't happen very often, because again, like I said, most of my clients, at least in my experience, they're not able to do their work, and they're clearly disabled. At least in my opinion, they are. So that doesn't come up. But what I do see, and that's the second part of this first mistake, is people who no longer are able to work waiting way too long to file for benefits. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is kind of what I was just talking about. They think that, you know what, we're going to get better, we're going to get back in the game, and we're going to be fine. 2, 3, 4 years go by and it hasn't happened. And they apply. And the problem there is that if you're an insured worker, if you have insurance for disability under Social Security, and I have other videos that talk about that. And you can also check out some of my guides. There are links above. You can go to, I think it's a free information link, and you'll find my guides. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put a link down below. And those guides talk about this, but if you've worked long enough and earned enough money, you're insured for your disability. And that insured status continues, it depends on how long you've worked, for a period of time after you stop working. But at one point, you will no longer be insured for your disability. And that can be a real problem if you wait too long to apply. The other misconception is that you'll read somewhere, and this is true, you have to show that your disability either has lasted 1 year or is expected to last 1 year. So some people may wait a whole year before they apply. You don't have to do that. If you have a condition, maybe you suffered an injury, maybe your condition has gotten worse, and there's a good chance that it's not going to get better within the next year, don't hesitate to apply. Because if you are denied and you have to file an appeal, you're in for a wait. And if that appeal is denied and you have to request a hearing, you're definitely in for a wait. So there's no point in waiting or dragging it out. File your application if you feel that you have some reasonable expectation that you're not going to be back to work within a year. Okay, let's go to the next mistake. So that's kind of a, not being clear on the questionnaires is kind of a broad way to describe this mistake, because you're going to get different questionnaires to fill out. There's one questionnaire that comes to mind when I thought up this mistake to avoid, and that's the function report. Almost everybody, I think everybody will get that. And then you may get other questionnaires that deal with pain. You may get questionnaires about that. But the function report, or the questionnaire that asks about your function, it'll ask you a question like, what do you do from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed? And I always say I'm going to do this. I want to put a ruler on the space in that page where you fill that out, because it's pretty small, but they want to tell you everything you're doing from the time you get up until the time you go to bed. Most people don't get into too much detail on that. And I'm not saying that you should give a minute by minute explanation of everything that you do, but you should provide some detail on what you're doing during the day. And let me give you an example on that. If you have to rest in the morning hours, if you have to recline, put your feet up, whatever it is, because of your disabling condition, you will want to explain that and include that in your everyday activities. If you're doing household chores, but the way you do them is modified because of your disabling condition, you would want to speak to how you do that differently, because many times when a claim is denied, you will see a reviewing physician say, well, they're doing household chores, so they must be able to do some kind of work. And that's because you haven't been very specific or very clear about what it is that you're doing in your everyday activities. Now, there is on the last page of the questionnaire, you can add or supplement your answers. So don't be afraid to do that and provide a little bit of detail. You don't need to write a book, but you should explain how you're doing things differently, or how you're avoiding certain activities all the way through, and just not doing things like taking out the garbage or scrubbing the tub or something like that. Be a little bit more detailed about how you're doing things differently or not doing things at all. So that's one mistake that I see people make when they fill out these questionnaires. So when I first started doing or handling Social Security disability claims, it was before the Affordable Care Act. And one of the things that I saw, we had an Oregon health plan, but it was very limited and not very many people were qualified for it. So I had many, many people who had no health insurance at all, no access to care. And some of the clinics in the local area, and they're everywhere, they would offer a sliding scale type of fee structure, but because so many people didn't have health insurance and were unable to pay for their health care, oftentimes folks were waiting to get in to see the doctor. And that would be a challenge, because one of the main things that you have to show when you're claiming a disability is that there is some objective medical basis for the claim. There has to be something that verifies why you're having so many limitations with your medical condition. Now we have the Affordable Care Act, and in Oregon, we have a pretty good Oregon health plan. We have coordinated care organizations, and many of my clients who are unable to afford their own health insurance are covered. So if you're able to, you need to get in to see the doctor. If you're having fights with your insurance coverage and doing that, that's fine. But you need to make an effort to see your doctor and be compliant with your treatment, because a judge may look at that as evidence. If you're not compliant with your treatment, the judge may look at that and use that as a way to find that you're not reliable in reporting your limitations, or they are not as bad as you claim they are because you're not seeking medical care. So I think I said enough about this. Go to the doctor if you need to go to the doctor, and be compliant with your doctor's orders, recommendations, whatever that may be. So let's move on to the next often made mistake with Social Security disability claims. Okay, so if I had to do this video over again, I would have flipped this one and made it number 3, because I talked about filling out the forms and how they help, and how to do that in a better way. But once you fill out the forms, then you should probably find a way to keep copies of the forms, because if your claim is denied and you have to fill out more forms, it's good to have these other forms, the prior forms, to look back on, because it will make it a heck of a lot easier for you to complete the forms. For example, you may be asked to give a history of your work activity, all the jobs that you've held, and sometimes they'll have you go back 15 years. And it's good to have these forms that you can look back on. Or you may be taking quite a few medications. I have certain clients who, they're taking 8 to 10 medications. Well, that's kind of hard to keep track of. So if you have the forms to look back on, keep them, especially if you're going through the appeal process. We do that in the office. When we take in a case, we are more often than not helping our client file an appeal. There is a disability appeal report that we file. It asks about medical care. It asks about testing. It asks about medications. And it's very helpful when we have to take that next step to go back and have that prior medication list to rely upon. So keep all your forms, because if the claim is denied, you're going to need them, because you're going to fill out more forms. There's no getting around it. All right, let's move on to what I believe to be the 5th and last mistake that you can avoid when you file for Social Security disability. I see this quite a bit. I will go through a claims file when I am retained on a case. And I'm retained on cases because claims have been denied. And there is a document in the claims file, and it's called a disability determination explanation. And that document will tell me if my client had filed a claim before. And in I don't know, if I had to guess, I would say 20% of the cases that I handle, my client has filed a prior application for Social Security disability, and it was denied, and they didn't appeal it. And the way that becomes a mistake is that if they had appealed that case, they may very well have been able to prove their disability, especially if they had gotten an attorney involved to help them document the disability, appeal the case, and gather the evidence that would justify approving the claim. So the main reason this is a mistake is that if there is merit to that prior application, the claimant, that's who you are when you're applying for benefits, will end up missing out on significant retroactive benefits. Now, in some cases, we can request, and we actually do it, even if it doesn't make sense to do it. No matter what, we're always asking for prior claim denials or prior applications to be reopened. But there are time limits involved on that. And I don't have it memorized, but at a certain point, you can't ask for a claim or an application to be reopened. And then there's a time period or a time frame where you can, but you have to give good cause for the reason the claim should be reopened. And I have seen judges do it on their own they just decide that there's sufficient reason for a claim to be reopened. I don't see that anymore. I suspect that maybe there's a policy that discourages that. But if at all there's some way that you can make a good cause argument to reopen an old claim, that would entitle you potentially to many, many months of additional benefits. So if you have a denial, you should appeal it. Don't wait. Although you may be able to later on reapply for benefits, don't wait, appeal it, and maybe have somebody look at it to see if it even makes sense to pursue the appeal further. But it's always good to appeal a denial, at least get a second set of eyes to review the claim. That way you know if it makes sense. Because the downside of that is you later learn that you could have had, a year or maybe 2 or even more benefits under your belt, some health insurance as well. So appeal the denial. You have 60 days. It's free, doesn't cost anything. And if you have a lawyer who, you hire a lawyer to get involved, they don't get paid unless you win the case or they win the case for you. So appeal that denial and see where you're at. Now, if you have questions, you can contact us on our website. That button is up there. I will leave a link on the YouTube version of this video down below. And if we are not able to help you, we can put you in touch with somebody that can, or we can at least give you some resources that will help. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Take care.